Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's terrific to be with you. I just said to Stratton, now we have all that data. Like, what are we going to do with it, right? I love it. I want to thank Beth and Stratton, John, and everyone at Essex County's Community Foundation for inviting me to speak this afternoon. And I'm so glad I got here early enough to really see that data and those components. Like, this is our community. These are our neighbors. And certainly, I want to thank you for the work you do to support both the philanthropic and nonprofit capacity of our region, and certainly as evidenced by this terrific gathering here today, leaders from many sectors as I look around the room. I know the work that you do really matters. Your focus on the needs of our region is really critical to us building strong, healthy, vibrant communities. And I know from experience that you are exemplars in that work, and that's really what these numbers tell the story of the places we live, the people we support, the ability for us to move forward, whether it's with educational attainment or economic mobility. And that's why I'm thrilled to be here in this data-formed systems work, something I also had the privilege to be a part of. Was it 2016? It didn't feel like it was that long ago, to help roll this out. I think this has an impact. It continues to have enriching opportunities for us to advance a shared agenda and to make sure we're having these conversations that lead to action about how we take on, positive changes on the ground in communities. The trends that you've identified are ones that impact people's lives in profound ways. The cost of living and pressures on household budgets, the need for skill training and pathways into good jobs and careers that meet our regional workforce needs, and the challenge of addressing the educational equity goals that so many of our communities have. That really depends on the work that we're doing in that space will really certainly play a meaningful role in our ability to meet our future workforce needs. I always used to say when I was in classrooms in Salem, look at our classrooms. That's our future workforce. Those are the folks that are going to be leading the charge, a decade from now. And in our administration, I should just say I feel a lot of gratitude being here today in this role as Lieutenant Governor. I was so proud to be a leader in the city of Salem for the last 17 years and to take that experience to be partnered up with Governor Healy, who I have a great privilege of working with. She was a rock star AG. She's been a terrific partner, and to be part of the first all-female team in the corner office for Massachusetts is, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that, and thank you for all the support and the many years I've had the privilege of working in different roles to try and advance community work, but doing it in partnership with Governor Healy is just phenomenal. We like each other. We both played college hoop. We have similar backgrounds. We've leaned into the basketball theme a bit. You may have noticed that. But we both want to go after it. Like, we see an opportunity, given the fact that we're in these positions. We feel a lot of people are rooting for us, and we know that also comes with deep gratitude and a deep responsibility to make sure we're using these roles, the power of convening, the opportunity to bring together resources to advance the quality of life in the places we live. And that's why I'm thrilled to be with you today and talk a little bit about the administration's vision for a more competitive, a more affordable, and a more equitable Massachusetts. Not just here in Essex County, although Essex County is my favorite county, I'm not afraid to say that, but really across every region in the Commonwealth. And why? Why? Well, because we know having a more competitive, more affordable, and more equitable Commonwealth is good for people. It's good for the people who live here, who own businesses here, who go to school here, who want to age in place here with dignity and respect. Our neighbors, our family, our friends, the people we see every day who we rely on in our daily lives. When it comes to affordability, I think it's pretty clear we can't control global inflation, right? But we can address some of the local drivers of the cost of living crisis, including housing costs and childcare. One data point that's not up here is we're number one in the high cost of housing and the high cost of childcare. That's not a list that we want to be on. We're dealing with an unprecedented housing crisis, and frankly, I've made it my mission to whatever group I'm talking to across this Commonwealth to not leave without saying a word about the housing crisis. It's rooted in a housing shortage that's built up over many years. We're 200,000 housing units short in Massachusetts right now. This is very much a supply and demand challenge. When you have lots of demand with little supply, it means what you do have costs a lot more. It's the work that I've engaged in, certainly as a leader in Salem, because I know that the key to a high quality of life is having a safe, accessible roof over your head. I firmly believe that housing is a human right, and it is key for us in terms of making sure we can drive down that high cost of living that is so important in Massachusetts, and certainly these data and slides are showing and bearing out. I'm actually here to you today, June 1st, the first day that we have created a new secretariat within the Commonwealth. One of the first orders of business as part of the administration's work was creating what's something called the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. And our first housing secretary, just sworn in today, Ed Augustus, is the former city manager in Worcester. Someone who understands what it means to have housing growth happen at all levels. We need more market rate housing. We need more housing for truly, truly vulnerable members of our population, below 30% of AMI. We need the missing middle, workforce housing. People who are pouring coffee and pouring beer for a living. Anyone who you leave your children with in the morning, or an older adult helping care for them. The shelves in the grocery store, they don't get stocked themselves. Somebody goes to work every day to do that, and too many of those folks cannot afford to live in our communities. Even our communities that used to be affordable are not affordable anymore. And one of the reasons we're excited to have this new Housing and Livable Community Secretariat is because it will give us an opportunity to focus on the full range of strategies that can help communities meet their housing needs in smart and equitable ways. We have to accelerate the pace of housing growth in Massachusetts, and every community has to play a role in it. You can't say we're not going to do it. We're a suburban community, we can't do it. Everyone has to say, how can we help meet our housing shortage? It's just no longer something that we can ignore. It's critical to growing our workforce and competing with other states for talent. Now that you can work here and live anywhere, young adults have a choice. And think about the young adults who are graduating. So many kids, like last month, this month, graduating. Can't wait to go to the Essex Tech graduation later today. But many of our college graduates left, right? They're done, they've finished up school. We want to keep them here in Massachusetts. But they're graduating with debt. Many of them, college is expensive, and then they're looking at housing. Some of the most expensive housing costs in America are right here in Massachusetts. What does that say? Well, it might mean that this generation is going to be the first one to do worse than their parents. That's not something we're willing to live with. So it's critical, that we really focus on making Massachusetts a more affordable place to live, take the pressure off household budgets, and frankly, we need everyone with us in this work. For us to be more equitable, for us to be able to tackle some of these needs, we need housing to push a pro-housing agenda. That means we need to think differently about how we approach housing in our community levels. We need to educate individuals, and we need to be thinking about opportunities for us to accelerate the pace of that. It can't take, we have 200,000 housing units we're short. We build just under 20,000 housing units a year on average. It can't take 10 years to catch up. Not with over half the renters in Massachusetts paying more than 30% of their income towards their rent. We're never going to beat it back. So we need your help in that. The cost of living is also a big focus of our budget proposal for fiscal year 24. We are proposing to use revenues from the Fair Share Amendment to invest in early education, as well as K through 12 and community college. Why is that important? Well, let's talk a little bit about that child care challenge. We're number one in child care cost, and we want to ensure that more families have access to programming essential to the healthy growth and development of all children. We know that high quality pre-K really matters to improving educational outcomes for our youngest learners. We also know it's just a tried and proven way to help working families, many of whom are are making the math work on limited incomes, many of whom are single-headed households led by women that cannot participate in the workforce because of the high cost of childcare. So we're really working hard to address additional revenues to support the childcare industry, which was hard hit coming out of this pandemic, to put the state on a path toward universal pre-K, starting in all of our gateway cities where we know we have the biggest equity gaps. And it's going to play an important piece of the work as we move forward. That also includes paying our childcare workers, in early ed in particular, more money than they're currently being paid. So, yeah, we can clap for that, right? We think this work is going to be critical to help communities on the ground, working families, and it's going to need a state partner in that effort. So there's additional resources in the budget for that. We've also looked at how we can support working families on the ground through our child and family tax credit. That's going to put $600. Anyone who's got a child or adult dependent living with them is going to be able to raise some additional resources to help with the basic costs associated with childcare, groceries, caring for somebody. And we know there are 700,000 moms, dads, and caregivers for more than 1 million dependents that could benefit from this credit, putting immediate dollars back into a family's pocket, and allowing more parents, frankly, if we support the childcare needs that we know we have, early childcare, early pre-K, to get those folks back in the workforce and have a significant equity impact, again, creating that economic mobility. After housing, the number one issue the governor and I hear about, no matter what community we're in, no matter what industry we're talking about, is workforce. I'm looking at Mary Saris right in front. One of the biggest challenges that has emerged as we recover from COVID has just been the workforce shortages. It's affected nearly all sectors of the economy, from healthcare to manufacturing, from education to hospitality sectors. There are just too many workers who don't have the skills and credentials they need to get jobs, and frankly, too many jobs that are going unfilled. If we want to recover from this pandemic fully, we need everyone working on all cylinders to the extent that we can. We have really low unemployment rate in Essex County and in many pockets of the Commonwealth, but we know there's a whole lot of people who are not necessarily in a job that's meeting their full capacity. And we want to connect workers to those job opportunities and create that pipeline. So our budget includes some big investments in higher education, early college, and training pathways into good jobs and careers. Why is it important that we invest in public higher ed? How many public higher ed grads do we have in the room? Any UMass, University, Salem State? Glad to be here at Endicott, wonderful private institution. But I will say that our public higher ed graduates, 75% of them stay in Massachusetts. They're our future nurses, our future teachers, our future entrepreneurs, our future lieutenant governors. I'm one of those. And one of the reasons we want to make sure we're thinking about how we can support our public higher ed partners is because we know there's a workforce connection there too. We've got a program known as Mass Reconnects, which is going to fund free community college for any student, any adult over the age of 25 who doesn't yet have a degree or an industry credential. We've got over 700,000 adults in Massachusetts who started college and never finished, right? Life got in the way. They've got some credentialing. We know that if we can break down those barriers for that additional credentialing, we're going to create an opportunity for those individuals to get upskilled, to expand their career opportunity, to go back to school so they can get a better job, or to go to school for the first time, in essence, as well. We're also proposing a number of key investments in workforce development programs, funding for apprenticeship programs. We're going to have 1,000 new apprentices funded in this new budget at both career technical institutes to help close those skill gaps and expand access to vocational ed. Some of those programs, the construction industry in particular, anyone tried to hire a plumber lately or an electrician? We know that there's opportunities. That's a tried and true apprentice model, but there are also apprentice models for lab techs and healthcare and some of the newer industries that we know are operating in Massachusetts and need that skill set. Expanding opportunities for high school students to explore college and career pathways before graduating high school. I'm looking around this room, and just about everyone in here, I'm willing to bet, graduated from high school. The high school you graduated from and the sorts of programming you did looks very much the same today as it did when you went into high school. Yet our high school kids are graduating into a whole different world. So we are really focused on high school redesign, knowing that we have success in a lot of our vocational programs. Every single vocational high school in Massachusetts has a waiting list. We want to support those efforts, keep those vocational schools strong, but we also know our comprehensive high schools have an opportunity to teach career pathways, to get into the same game, because those students want hands-on experience. We also know we have an opportunity to invest in technology. A lot of lessons learned through the pandemic. Some of our students didn't necessarily mind Zoom. Some of the same reasons that we like to work from home, students like to learn from home. They're going to be graduating, and if they go on to college, many of them are going to be taking online courses or entering a career in workforce that has online or remote work. How do we build that muscle early? How do we take advantage of the innovation that we know we are fond of here in Massachusetts and innovate the way we educate our students? Too many of our young adults, some of that is tied to, if you look at the data, absences in high schools, like who is not showing up. They're not showing up because they're not engaged. We have a whole generation of young people who grew up on this And we're still teaching them very much in a way that's a little different. We have work to do in that area. We're committed to helping fund it, to helping lead that innovation, and to learning on the ground from the folks who do it best. In those classrooms, leading those schools, understanding that we're willing to embrace new ways of looking at how our students learn. So many years ago, if you became a nurse, you went to the hospital to learn. You were trained at a hospital. You didn't necessarily go to college. We want to support and celebrate innovation, career pathways, apprenticeships, experiential learning that so many people benefit from. In the coming weeks and months, we're rolling out even significant additional workforce initiatives, lengthening the lead in the areas we're doing well, like life sciences and clean tech, and also working to look into areas where we know we have opportunities for growth. And as always, we welcome leaders from across sectors and regions to be at the table. We want your ideas and your expertise to help us grow and make sure this Commonwealth continues to thrive. I think bottom line, we have fantastic schools and programs, we have talented workers, we have innovative businesses, and we have open jobs. So our strategy is to bring more resources to the table and to get everyone working together to expand economic opportunities and harness the full potential of Massachusetts. I want to touch upon educational equity because I think it's just so critical to how we think about the success of the Commonwealth long term. I touched upon like pre-K and our community college investments. Our budget also includes the largest dollar amount invested for K through 12 funding for schools. This is the largest investment in the state's history to fund the full Student Opportunity Act. And that's really critical to address some of those pandemic learning losses. It is pretty tough to look at numbers that have third grade readers not at the level they need to be at a larger and larger percentage growing from this pandemic. And we know it's critical to address this from an equitable lens. This funding is going to make sure every individual school district has the funding they need to provide the guidance counseling, the social workers, the social and emotional supports, which, if you haven't seen some of the latest CDC data, our teens and our young adults, this is definitely the last 2 years, the saddest generation of young adults we've seen in American history. Anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, a loss of togetherness has really impacted our teenagers and our young adolescents. We know our schools are going to need to make investments not only in how we learn and how we engage, but also those support systems around counseling and guidance work that we think can help us as we come out of this pandemic. We've also got $1 million for universal mental health screeners. Students who've never experienced mental health challenges are now experiencing that. I don't want us to go home and paint the windows black, because we're on it, okay? We're gonna make it a little bit easier to gain access to those services, but there is work to do, and I think for a long time, our teachers in schools have been asked to do so much, and for a long time, we've talked about meeting the full spectrum of needs that students bring to the classroom. This isn't 100% new. We've always had, I think, unevenness as we think about how we address educational attainment. Now is the time for us to get smart about bringing resources to bear to address it. If I think about what work we did during the pandemic, it was all hands on deck. Everybody did whatever we had to do to make things happen. The esprit de corps that people brought, whether it was feeding individuals in our community or making sure that kids had access to computers so they could do their remote learning. We need to take that same spirit to make sure we're meeting the needs of our students, that young population that needs us right now. And no matter how highly our public education system ranks nationally, and it does, we know we can't be just number one for some. We've got to be able to deliver educational excellence for all of our students. That's going to take the extra effort, not only in resources, but in our willingness to innovate and think about how we do this work. I'm sure every administration, new administration, we're in the first day of our 6-month thinks, this is a critical, pivotal moment in our history. I think that too, and so does Governor Healy. It does feel like we're in an inflection point coming out of this pandemic. We're not all quite sure exactly how this pandemic is going to impact the economy. Are people going back to work? How are we actually going to treat healthcare and deliver high-quality healthcare that we're used to? How do we think about tackling a climate crisis when we're still overcoming some of the work that's tied to this pandemic and the challenges? It really does feel like we're an inflection point in Massachusetts in this what I call messy transition time, and that we also have access to resources. More resources than we've ever had from the federal government. Frankly, even weathering some of the challenges through this pandemic, Massachusetts came through it from an economic perspective pretty well. So we have an opportunity to address these challenges in more comprehensive ways. We do have access to resources. We always worry about not having enough, but we've got some. But this is our chance to put everyone together towards an effort, an all-hands-on-deck moment for sort of a Team Massachusetts. The governor and I talk about Team Massachusetts a lot. Yes, we both played hoop, and so we think about that, that team component. But it's also about a desire to go out and get it, about pulling people together who bring immense talent and creativity, data, and local knowledge to meet these challenges, build on our successes. We're competing for federal funding. We're competing for talent and investment. We're competing to be a place where all working people can thrive and continue. So I'm grateful for all of you, for Essex County Community Foundation, for your commitment to making sure we not only have the resources available to meet our needs, but we're doing so in a way that's driven by data. We know what's happening on the ground, something we can measure. We can look at this a year or two from now and see, where do we move the needle? Let's invest in those areas where we know works, things that we know work. We also want to make sure that we have a competitive, affordable, and equitable Essex County when we think about competition for growing our Commonwealth. We'll continue to pledge our administration's partnership at the local level and the regional level. So I'd encourage everyone here, reach out and find ways to connect with ECCF. This work, as much as we support it and want to be a partner in it, we know what happens on the ground at the community level. The state doesn't educate kids. It happens locally in cities and towns. The state doesn't necessarily address workforce challenges. We work in partnership with employers, with those running apprentice programs, with our community colleges to grow the expertise in making sure we have the skills. I'd like to say we don't run a transportation system, but we do, and we're working on fixing it. We're going to fix it, I can tell you that. I'm still not quite sure where bottom is yet with the MBTA, but I can tell you this. For the first time in 8 years, the MBTA is being led by an engineer who is a transit professional who ran a system before, and we are building a strong team there to give them the ingredients to make sure, as we think about transportation, we're going to have a system that you can be proud of. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but we're working hard on it. And as we think about transportation, so much of the conversation we need to have is not just about how we get people back and forth to Boston. That's what the MBTA is supposed to do well. It's how we get people in and out of the North Shore in our regions where we all play, work, go to school. And that's some of the work that I think innovation that we want to be able to support and have supported at the community level. So I hope you can tell I'm still passionate about this work. The people in this room, all of you, are going to help us get this done. So I want to say thank you for being here, for what you do each and every day in your communities. Thanks for letting me be a part of it today. And we want to grow a thriving Massachusetts that works for and welcomes all. Appreciate your support.